In this video, we'll learn how to estimate how well a particular support will work for our main DPS. Supports in Snowbreak mostly contribute by buffing your main DPS with either attack or damage. However, not every character scales the same with these two types of buffs. Let's look at Bluebolt as an example. A 1% damage buff will give her about 10,000 extra damage over 15 seconds. A flat attack buff of 10 will give her about 2,500 damage over the same time period. Thus, a 1% damage buff is equivalent to gaining about 40 attack for her. That means that if she is supported by Kaguya with a tier 2 Pine Aurora and gets a 30% damage buff, it is the same as if she gained 1,200 attack. Let's compare that to Winter Solstice. A 1% damage buff will give her about 7,800 extra damage over 15 seconds. A flat attack buff of 10 will give her about 4,400 damage over the same time period. A 1% damage buff for her is only equivalent to gaining 18 attack. So a Kaguya support with a 30% damage bonus is the same as gaining 540 attack. We can see from this that it is much harder to replace a damage bonus with an attack bonus if you're supporting Katia. Even if we take the highest flat attack buffer, Etchel, and give Katia 4,000 flat attack, it works out the same as if we gave her a 100% damage buff. If we give Winter Solstice Etchel's 4,000 flat attack buff, it's equivalent to giving her a 220% damage buff. Knowing this, we can focus on supporting Katia with damage type buffs and supporting Winter Solstice with attack type buffs. Now, let's look at how our top DPS operatives scale and see how they benefit from the highest attack buffer, Etchel, and the highest damage buffer, Tess. Remember that all general damage buffs end up in the same place in the formula. Elemental buffs, ballistic buffs, and everything else are just considered damage buffs in the end. Also, these calculations are done with max gear operatives for consistency, but will generally hold up, especially if they are using their signature weapon.
Voices out in the depths of the snow.
That's my 10,000 steps for the day. Perfection, right?
After tonight, the days start getting longer.
Four-star support weapons give around 800 to 1,000 attack at tier 5. This is always a smaller buff than a 5-star support, but some operatives will be hit harder than others. According to the numbers we just saw, Bluebolt would be missing out on over 3,500 attack equivalent compared to using Tess, but Winter Solstice would only miss 1,000. A word of caution: due to the way the damage formula works, and we'll go into that another time, anytime you give an operative one type of buff, it increases the effectiveness of the other type of buff. For relatively balanced operatives like Ethereal Cloud, you probably want to use one of each type of buff. On the other hand, since Bluebolt scales much better with damage, it might be worth using two damage type supports with her. This is a graph of how much damage each operative gains with 1% damage or 10 attack. What's important isn't how they compare to one another. Different gains are just a reflection of their base DPS. We want to look at the ratio between how they scale as we went through earlier. This is just a quick visual representation of how they compare side by side for each operative. In a later video, we'll look deeper into how operatives scale their damage with these buffs, and also into other ways that supports can increase damage.